Hello, welcome to Writing 121. This is our final virtual session. And yes, it is very virtual because once again, I scheduled the session for a day when you are not required to be in school. For some reason, I think I just don't see those as non-school days. So I apologize. And I will have this available for you guys starting tonight in case you'd rather do it tonight. So this is Thursday rather than tomorrow. Do not wait. And I suppose if you're getting this now, you've already maybe waited, but this is about revising your final essay. And I want you to practice. I want you to do some practicing of revision. And so if you wait until the last minute or you wait till you're completely done with your essay, then this is not going to help you much. And you may realize that you could have done more with your final essay. But anyway, I want to talk about revision. A lot of times students see revision as checking for spelling errors. And you do need to check for spelling errors, but the truth is we rarely have a lot of spelling errors anymore because we have something called spell check. And spell check will catch most of those errors. Now, what you really will need to look for are what are called malapropisms. So these are words that look and kind of sound like the word you meant to use, but then actually aren't the word. So they, when I read it, it's like, whoa, why did they choose this word? That's not the right word. And it's just a spelling issue. But they don't get caught because spell check won't catch them because they're spelled correctly. So one that's coming to mind right now is presence. So his presence was needed in the class. That is spelled Presence. But it sounds exactly the same and it looks very similar to presents. He was given a lot of presents for Christmas. So I'll have students use the wrong form of presents in the paper. And yeah, it's a spelling error, but it's also called malapropism. It sounds the same, looks really similar, just isn't the right word. So those are things that you will need to look for. But what I'm talking about in revision are much bigger edits. And I've seen students edit, and a lot of times they'll do one draft, kind of look it over and say good enough and turn it in. And really, if they went through the revision process and really focused on some of the big picture items, what they turned in would be that much more strong. So I want to talk a little bit about that. All right, so start with the big picture. So even, let's say you've written your first draft. I also have students who have a very hard time writing a rough first draft and they're kind of revising as they go. And if you do that, that's fine. You will still need to go through this process in the end. So start with big picture. Number one, does your introduction catch attention? This is really important, especially in a long paper. If you want someone to read your paper, hook them. Right? So did you use, a startling statistic? Did you use a quotation that really pulls the reader in? Did you start broad? So, let's say your topic is on anorexia, right? That's a very specific topic. But if you start broad, if you start with, all of us have self-image issues, right? If you start broad, then as a reader, I'm going to read that first sentence, all of us have self-image issues, and I'm going to go, yeah, right? Because we all do. Even if we don't all struggle with anorexia, we do have self-image issues. So start broad, pull the reader in, and then get narrow with your thesis statement. So look at that first. 2, is your thesis statement supported by all the main points? Now, I've read a few of your essays this semester, and I'll read the thesis statement, I'll read the rest of the paper, and then I'll go back and look at the thesis statement, and I'll realize that really wasn't what the paper was about. And I know, at the time you might think you're writing about that, but after you've written the whole thing, go back, look at that thesis statement. Did you really support it with your main points? Or is it possible that you really are talking about a different topic? And this is something you want to catch. You don't want me to catch this because it really could mess up your whole paper, right? So look at that. 3, do your main points make sense? So again, look at your thesis statements and go back through your main points. Are they connected? And is it clear that they're connected? 4, have I transitioned from paragraph to paragraph smoothly? This is a skill that in the collaborative essay you really have to work on, which is why I do the collaborative essay. I know how hard it is to coordinate that essay, and I still have students who are struggling to get it done. But it is about transitioning. It is about making something sound cohesive and whole, even with different voices in the essay. So you're writing this paper. Have you done the same? Have you transitioned from point to point? Or is it just point, point, point? And does it feel choppy? Or have you said, my next point, or the last point talked about this and this, and naturally we're going to follow with this and this and this, right? Have you transitioned? And if not, consider ways that you can do it so it's not choppy or super obvious, right? So in a research paper that's 6 pages long, which is what you guys are working on, you probably don't want my first point is, and then have 12 more following points, because by the time you say 12th, right, I'm getting really annoyed by those transitions. So they do need to be smooth. And the best way to do that is to introduce the next point in the last sentence of the paragraph above. So consider ways that you can do that. 5, when you read the sentences, do they sound smooth and do they make sense? You know, I know this is embarrassing and students always tell me I can't do that, I don't want to do that. Read your paper out loud. It is embarrassing and it makes you self-conscious and you feel like a moron and you kind of look silly. But the truth is you are going to catch so much by reading it out loud. Now, another trick is to have someone else read it out loud. And I know that's even harder. But if you've got a parent who is pretty good about this and not super critical, have them read it to you. Because as they're reading, you're going to hear them stumble. You're going to hear them miss words. And you're going to realize, oops, that phrase wasn't clean. That phrase wasn't smooth. Oh, I missed a word there. And you're going to catch these things, whereas you might not if you're just reading it silently again and again and again. So think about having someone read it out loud or read it out loud yourself. Use both spell check and grammar check. Usually this is a natural, especially if you're using Google Docs and spell check is already turned on. But every now and then I'll have someone who just didn't use it. Another thing to do is you could, and this was an assignment in the class, you could go to it's not Turnitin.com. Now suddenly I can't think of the name of it. You can go to a site that will evaluate your paper and tell you how many sentences you have that are run-ons or that are short, or they will tell you the average word count in your sentences. And if you plug your paper into one of those sites, you're going to get a grammar check. They're going to tell you if you have fragments or run-ons. This is a really great way to catch stuff that you might not catch on your own. Finally, have you documented all of your sources and checked your works cited page? I will tell you right now that if you turn a paper in that doesn't have a works cited page, I won't grade it. This is a persuasive research paper. You need to have your citations in your paper and you need to have that works cited page. Without it, I don't know where you got your information and I don't know how to check on it. So please remember these pieces. And then that works cited page, it can't just be URL links, right? Remember, that's not how we document sources. If you have any questions about this, go back to the last virtual session. We really, in that one, walked through how to cite sources, and there are a number of videos on how to do that. So go back and look at that, make sure you're doing it correctly. So I want to look at this. We're going to do a little bit of hands-on editing. This is a paper that I got from another student a couple of years ago, and no, I didn't include the student's name. And really, it's a pretty good paper. But I want to walk through the process of revision. Because again, I think sometimes we don't revise well. We just read through it and we go, that's good enough for me. And at this point, I'm not going to be giving you feedback on the rough draft, so the more work you can put into it up front, the better off you are going to be. All right, so this is the introduction to the paper, and we're going to read through it once, and then we're going to look at ways that we could revise it and make it even better. If you ain't scared, Albie said, you ain't human. Dashner. So right here, I shouldn't be interrupting myself probably, but right here, they have correctly documented the source. This is the author of the book, The Maze Runner, and if I look on their Works Cited page, I will know that where to find this source because it will be listed alphabetically with Dashner as the author's last name. All right, if you ain't scared, Albie said, you ain't human. The fear you feel when you walk through a bad neighborhood is short-lived and replaced with the comfort of your car or home. However, what if it isn't or wasn't? What if the fear you felt were to become a perpetual nightmare? Author James Dashner addresses these primal fears and their aftermath in his novel, The Maze Runner. The Maze Runner brings to life a very real truth that we see in today's society, which is the unbelievable strength and perseverance of those who have to endure adverse conditions. In The Maze Runner, the main character, Thomas, is sent to live amongst other boys his age in what they call the Glade. While there, Thomas and his peers are tested with not only the daunting maze that lies on the other side of the Glade's wall, but also the monsters that inhabit it. This stressor, along with many others, represent the struggles that the less fortunate are left to deal with and their amazing strength that gets them through it. I'm going to pull that down so you can see it. Okay, so this author did a very good job of starting broad and getting specific, right? This author started with the fear you feel when you walk through the bad neighborhood, right? So already they're connecting to the reader, and then they're working into the Maze Runner, the specifics from the Maze Runner. So this is great. They've got that funnel going on, start broad, get narrow, and have your thesis at the bottom. But there are certainly some things that we can fix. So first of all, the fear you feel when you walk through, I want you to avoid you. As soon as you use you or second person in a paper, you are pointing a finger, and the reader right away feels that finger pointed at them. So, it's almost an accusation or a command. And avoiding that in research papers is a really good idea unless you have an excellent reason for using it. There are times when you want to direct your points right to the reader. In this case, I'm not sure it's really effective. So give it a second thought if you've used second person, because I will note if you use second person, and then make sure that you are using it for a good reason. All right, so I would take out you. In this case, I would walk through this sentence and take out you. So the fear you feel when you walk through a bad neighborhood is short-lived and replaced with the comfort of your car or home. This also isn't a great sentence. So I would revamp this whole sentence into something like, when walking through an unfamiliar neighborhood, people often feel fear until they arrive at a comfortable destination like a car or home. Now, I've completely changed the sentence, so the second part of it doesn't make sense anymore. However, what if it wasn't? But if I were to keep that, and I'm not going to, I would have to correct the punctuation. Remember, you start a semicolon before however, and then you follow up with a comma. And so this author would need to correct that. So I'm going to take this out. When walking through an unfamiliar neighborhood, people often feel fear until they arrive at a comfortable destination like a car or a home. But what if the fear you felt were to become a perpetual nightmare? Okay, so again, I would want this author to take out you, but they're getting closer here. They're transitioning from the vague into the specific, so I do like the sentence. Author James Dashner addresses these primal fears and their aftermath in his novel, The Maze Runner. So really nicely done. This author included the name of the author of the book. They put the title of the book in italics. That's all excellently done. So The Maze Runner brings to life a very real truth that we see in today's society, which is the unbelievable strength and perseverance of those who have to endure adverse conditions. I'm going to highlight this sentence. And the reason I'm going to highlight this sentence is because I think this is the thesis. Oh, that didn't work, did it? Okay, hang on. Let's highlight this a different color. How about maroon? Okay. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so in his novel, The Maze Runner. In The Maze Runner, the main character, Thomas, is sent to live amongst other boys his age in what they call the Glade. While there, Thomas and his peers are tested with not only the daunting maze that lies on the other side of the Glade's wall, and we need a comma here. Oh, no, we don't. Yeah, because it is a complete sentence afterwards. But also the monsters that inhabit it. This stressor, along with many others, represents, so this is singular, we want represents, the struggles that the less fortunate are left to deal with and their amazing strength that gets them through. This is super vague, right? I don't know who the less fortunate are that this author is referring to, and I don't know what this amazing strength is, and I don't know what they're getting through. Through it, the struggle. This sentence right here, I would want to take out. So we're going to delete it right now. Now, let's go back here. If we move this, copy and paste. That didn't work. Let's go back. I only had part of it for some reason. Copy and paste. All right, so Thomas and his peers are tested with not only the daunting maze that lies on the other side of the Glade's wall, but also the monsters that inhabit it. The Maze Runner brings to life a very real truth that we see in today's society, which is the unbelievable strength and perseverance of those who have to endure adverse conditions. This is the thesis statement. So why the author had it in the middle, I'm not sure, but we're going to remove it. We're taking it out and we're putting it right at the bottom, right at the end of that funnel in the introduction. And there is a claim. The Maze Runner brings to life a very real truth that we see in today's society. And the reason is the author shows unbelievable strength and perseverance of those who have to endure adverse conditions. This is a great thesis statement. But for some reason, the author wasn't using this statement as the thesis. So we moved it. This is the process I want you to go through. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it's tedious. It's a lot of work. Writing a good essay is a lot of work. But if you walk through your essay this way, you are going to write a really fantastic essay. Okay, so that's the kind of process I want you to work on. Now, once you have done that, this is what your works cited page should look like. Okay, so I've seen lots of works cited pages from you guys, and you should have the author out to the left margin of the source, or if it's not an author, if it's a title like here, that would be out to the left margin. Everything underneath is indented. And I've seen this in all kinds of shapes and forms within your paper. This is what it should look like. Now, I've heard from 2 or 3 of you guys now that it's hard to indent for some reason in Google Docs. Go to YouTube and look for Google Docs hanging indent. And they will tell you how to do a hanging indent, which is this. This is what you have going on here is the hanging indent. And you got to put it into the paper. It's actually, like a margin setting. Yeah, so it's something that you need to learn how to do, but it is called the hanging indent, and give it a shot. I'm not going to get too crazy picky if you've got something that you just couldn't figure out, but in the future, I do want you to know how to do that hanging indent in case you write some 25-page paper sometime and still can't get these things indented. Okay, so look that up. Also, if you have any questions about citations, go to this source, OWL Purdue. It's a fantastic resource for citing sources. Okay, so I'm going to see a works cited page that looks like this. It's going to be alphabetized. Things are going to be indented correctly. And I will see everything from this page in your paper somewhere. That's why it's called works cited. So works cited means you cited all of these resources in your paper somewhere. If you haven't cited all of these resources in your paper somewhere, that means this is not a works cited page, it is a bibliography. That's the difference between works cited and bibliography. So I want to see all of the sources that you've used in your paper here, and then I want to see them in the paper. I'm going to see Dean, right, in parenthetical citations. I'm going to see Ebert in parenthetical citations, etc. What I don't want to see is a huge list of resources and then only see like 3 of them in your paper. Okay, then I'll ask you, where did you use this, right? This isn't a works cited page. Okay, so make sure you've only listed the ones you've used and then make sure you use them. All right, finally, to get credit for this is what I want you to practice. I want you to turn in 1 page of your research paper where you have done the following things. Number 1, changed vague words, right? So think about these vague words, thing, really, stuff, even, now, etc. Really vague words, and let me see if I can type on this, and second person. All right, so take those out. See if you can take them out and then highlight what you changed. Okay, so make sure you highlight it in some color that will actually show up, like in this case, burnt orange or whatever that is. I want you to move a sentence. Even if later you think, oh, I don't like that move, I want you to try it. Okay, you read through a paragraph and think, oh, wait a minute, I think if I move that sentence, it would make more sense. Try it. Okay, you're never going to know if you don't try it. So move a sentence and then highlight that in a different color. We're going to make it green, which probably won't stand out very much, but anyway. I want you to add a specific example. Okay, so let's say you're talking about, if I go back to the topic of anorexia, so you're talking about someone with anorexia maybe develops phonetic exercise habits. Give us an example of an exercise habit that really is unhealthy. Okay, that someone's exercising, you know, they're running half a marathon every day, right? That's ridiculous. You're going to hurt yourself doing that. Yeah, so give specific examples. So add a specific example and again, highlight a different color. Then check the transitions and highlight your transitions. So if you have them in there and you know you have them in there and you're feeling pretty good about them, highlight them. Here are my transitions and I feel good about those. If you don't have them, add them. And then again, highlight those transitions. Okay, so when you are done looking at this video and working through this process, take 1 page from your research paper, walk through this editing process. I'm excited to see what you do, and then turn in that paper for the assignment, that 1 page, so the 1 page Google Doc from your research paper where you've highlighted these things. And then I'll know that you are really being conscious about revision, taking it seriously, and spending some time on that paper, turning it into the best it can be. All right, you guys have great topics. I always look forward to reading your papers. Do remember that they need to, if I don't have them by the 15th, I will not score them, okay? So they have to be in by that day, but they are actually due next week, and I would prefer to have them next week so I have time to score them. Otherwise, I will not do as good of a job. And if I don't have them by the 15th, I can't do grades. So that's kind of where we are with that deadline. All right, thanks. I look forward to your papers. It's been a good semester once again, and I hope to see you maybe in Writing 122 or English 104.